The first thing I noticed wasn't the ambient hum of forced, desperate conversation or the stifling, synthetic warmth of the rented hotel banquet hall. It wasn't even the fact that my friend Wayne was currently choking on his overpriced, watered-down gin 3 tables away after a woman asked him about his 5-year plan. It was the scent of expensive cedar and something sharper, like ozone right before a thunderstorm, cutting cleanly through the heavy smell of stale beer, cheap cologne, and Friday night exhaustion. I sat at table 12, my navy blazer feeling exactly as heavy as the regret of letting Wayne drag me to a corporate speed dating mixer in the middle of my busy season. The lighting was deliberately low, strung with cheap fairy lights meant to cast a warm, deceptive glow over the room, but it only made the shadows under people's eyes look deeper. Across from me sat Joanna Alvarez. I knew her, not well, but I knew her. She lived in 4B, exactly 1 floor below my apartment. For the past 8 months. I'd actively ignored her, not out of malice, but out of a recognized incompatibility. I was a chef who worked nights, smelling of wood smoke and roasted garlic, returning home at 2 in the morning. She was a corporate strategist who left at 6 in the morning, encased in tailored wool coats, her heels clicking a frantic militaristic rhythm against the lobby tiles. She always looked too intense, too guarded, like a woman holding a deeply frayed rope and refusing to let it snap. Tonight, she wore a light blue dress that managed to look both completely effortless and strictly armored. Her dark hair fell in soft, unstructured waves around her shoulders, a stark contrast to the severe buns she wore in the elevator. But her eyes were exactly the same, sharp, calculating the room, calculating me. I had watched her systematically dismantle the previous 3 guys in exactly 3 minutes each. Wayne had leaned over my shoulder 20 minutes ago, pointing her out with a swizzle stick, and predicted that Joanna would spend her 3 minutes proving I had come to the wrong table. I didn't care about leagues. I cared about the fact that she looked like she hadn't slept a full, uninterrupted night in 5 years, yet was holding herself together with willpower and long practice. "You're a chef," she said. Her voice was lower than I expected it to be in this setting. Smooth, steady, but edged with a brittle exhaustion she was trying very hard to hide. "I run the line at the Ironwood," I said, keeping my hands flat on the sticky surface of the table. "Fire, knives, controlled chaos, it pays the rent." She tilted her head. A small, white rectangular card rested under her fingertips. She traced the edge of it with a thumbnail that looked slightly chewed. Then, with a deliberate motion, she slid it across the dark wood of the table. I looked down. Her phone number filled the center in clean, precise, almost architectural ink with a small, uncharacteristically messy heart drawn underneath. I brought one hand to my chest, genuinely thrown, my fingers brushing the cotton of my shirt before I could stop them. "You planned this?" Her mouth shifted at one corner. "I planned to give you the card. What happens after that depends on whether you lose it." A buzzer blared across the room, an obnoxious, grating sound signaling the end of the 3-minute rotation. Men began shuffling like cattle to the next numbered table. I didn't move immediately. I knew better than to demand an explanation when we had spent months silently ignoring each other in our building's lobby. I picked up the card, the thick cardstock rough against my thumb, and slipped it into the breast pocket of my blazer. I stood up, gave her a single, acknowledging nod, and walked out of the hall without finishing the rotation. An hour later, I was back in the sanctuary of my own kitchen, not the sprawling stainless steel industrial line at the restaurant, but my small, impeccably organized apartment kitchen. It was quiet. It had that particular silence of a building right after the fire alarm resets, a heavy, ringing stillness where the sudden panic has drained out, but the adrenaline hasn't quite left your bloodstream. I tossed my keys into the ceramic bowl by the door and stared at the small white card resting on my granite counter. Before I could reach for my phone to dial the number, a sharp, urgent knock rattled my front door. I frowned, glancing at the clock. It was pushing 11. I walked over and pulled the door open. Joanna stood in the hallway, The light blue dress was covered by a heavy, slate-gray trench coat. She wasn't holding a phone or a purse. She was holding a manila folder, her knuckles white from the force of her grip. The cool, calculating woman from Table 12 was gone. In her place was someone standing on the absolute edge of a cliff. "My car is dead," she said, her voice tight, skipping any preamble or greeting. "It's in the lower parking garage. It won't turn over, and I need to be at the West End Community College campus in 20 minutes, or I lose everything I've worked for over the last 2 years." The part of me that carried couches for Wayne and remembered every wholesale market cashier's name went quiet. The kitchen expeditor took over, the part of my brain that could face 200 angry diners, a broken walk-in freezer, and a missing sous chef. Then find the exact sequence that still got dinner out. I stepped back from the doorway. "Do you want a ride? Roadside assistance or help checking the fuse?" "A ride," she said immediately. "I know we don't speak. I know I ignored you when you held the elevator on Tuesday. I am asking you for a ride." "Then come in long enough for me to get my keys." I kept my voice level. 10 seconds. No questions until we're moving." She stepped over the threshold. I grabbed my truck keys, a heavy Maglite flashlight, and my leather jacket. "What's at the college?" I asked, shrugging into the jacket. "The registrar's office. There's an emergency drop box for practicum documentation. It locks at midnight. If my paperwork isn't inside, I fail the term. And if I fail the term—" She stopped, her teeth clicking together as she snapped her jaw shut. She looked away, her left thumbnail digging so hard into her right index finger that I could see the crescent moon indent forming in her skin. "A habit. Tell." I logged it away and didn't mention it. "Do you want me to carry the folder? Or do you want it in your hands?" I asked. Her grip eased by one finger. Mine. We took the stairs down to the garage. My truck was an older model, a heavy-duty domestic beast I used for hauling restaurant supplies, but the engine was pristine. She climbed into the passenger side, her movements stiff, clutching the manila folder against her chest like body armor. I turned the key, the engine roaring to life with a steady, reliable rumble. I backed out of the space and hit the street, charting the fastest route to the West End in my head, mentally bypassing the construction on 4th Avenue. "Why were you at the speed dating event?" I asked, keeping my eyes on the wet asphalt as a light drizzle began to fall. "Because my firm's senior partner was there," she said, staring straight ahead at the windshield wipers. "He thinks I work too hard. He thinks I'm going to burn out and cost them a major client. He suggested, very pointedly, that I need to get out more and show I have a balanced life before they consider me for managing partner. Being seen there was a strategic optics." "And the card?" I asked gently. "You looked safe," she said simply. "You looked like someone who wouldn't ask me for a 5-year plan." "I don't care about your 5-year plan," I confirmed, shifting gears as we merged onto the expressway. "I care about the next 15 minutes. We made it to the campus with 6 minutes to spare. The campus was dark, the brutalist concrete buildings casting long, geometric shadows under the amber glow of the security lights. I pulled the truck up to the curb, directly in front of the administration building. "Go," I said, throwing the truck into park but leaving the engine running. She unbuckled her belt, threw the door open, and sprinted up the concrete stairs. I watched her slot the thick manila envelope into the heavy steel drop box built into the wall. I saw the physical slump of her shoulders as the metal flap clanged shut. The tension didn't entirely leave her body, but the immediate crisis had passed. She walked slowly back down the stairs and climbed into the warmth of the cab. She smelled like rain and cedar. "Thank you," she whispered, leaning her head back against the headrest, closing her eyes. "You're welcome," I said. I didn't push the truck into gear. I let the heater run, the warm air circulating through the small space. "Now, tell me why a corporate strategist is dropping off practicum documentation at a community college at midnight." She opened her eyes, turning her head to look at me. The amber light from the street lamp cut across her face, highlighting the exhaustion pulling at the corners of her mouth. Because I'm not just a corporate strategist, she said, her voice hollow. I'm 2 classes away from a master's degree in social work, specifically systemic family counseling. I absorbed the information without reacting. Does your firm know? She let out a harsh, bitter laugh. God, no. They would crucify me. They want sharks. They want people who bleed spreadsheets and live for the billable hour. If they knew I was spending my weekends working at a free clinic and my nights writing papers on systemic poverty, they would sideline me instantly. They'd say my focus was split. They'd say I lacked the killer instinct. So you live a double life, I said, resting my forearms on the steering wheel. I compartmentalize, she corrected sharply. And the car battery? I asked. It doesn't just die without warning. She went perfectly still. The silence stretched out, thick and heavy. Finally, she looked down at her hands. My ex-husband, Richard. He was at the apartment building tonight. He knew I had the deadline. He doesn't want me to get the degree. He thinks if I become a social worker, I'll stop making the kind of money that funds the alimony agreement we are currently contesting in court. I felt a cold, hard spike of anger settle directly behind my ribs. He disabled your car. He pulled the relay fuse, she said quietly. He left it sitting on the hood, a message. He wanted me to panic, to call him, to beg him for a ride so he could negotiate the settlement terms in the car. But you knocked on my door instead. When we get back, do you want me to check the fuse, call a mechanic, or leave the car alone? I asked as I put the truck into gear. Check the fuse, she said. Then help me make the schedule harder to sabotage. Help, not take it over. The correction landed cleanly. I had already begun issuing orders as if her life were a dinner service. Understood. You choose the menu. I only run the board. My grandfather used to tell me not to sand against the grain just because it was faster. In a kitchen, force could ruin a sauce. Outside one, it could turn help into control. Joanna had asked for a system, not a new boss. Back in the lower garage, the relay fuse sat on the hood exactly where Richard had left it. I held the mag light while Joanna photographed the fuse, the open relay slot, and the timestamp on the parking level camera. We did not touch anything until Building Security Officer Mara Chen logged the scene. A roadside technician reinstalled the relay after signing the service note, and Joanna emailed copies to her family law attorney before we went upstairs. The dead car became evidence instead of another private threat. On Tuesday, my one day off, Joanna sat at my kitchen island with her laptop open and color-coded calendars spread aggressively across the butcher block. Bryce, her coworker who once spent 11 elevator floors explaining a joke she had not laughed at the first time, had sent 3 client files that needed review by morning. Her cardigan was buttoned wrong, the left side hanging an inch lower than the right. I noticed and said nothing. I turned on the burner. I pulled a cast iron skillet from the rack. I'd picked up fresh sea scallops from the market that morning. I patted them completely dry with a paper towel. Moisture is the enemy of a good sear. I heated the oil until it shimmered, right on the edge of smoking, and set the scallops in the pan. The immediate, violent sizzle filled the room. I timed it perfectly. 2 minutes on the first side, a pat of butter and a sprig of thyme added, basting the foaming butter over the top before flipping them to reveal a perfect, golden brown crust. I plated them over a bed of sweet corn puree, wiped the rim of the plate with a clean towel, and slid it directly over her color-coded spreadsheet. Eat, I said. I don't have time to eat, she said. If I don't finish this risk assessment by midnight, I miss Thursday's seminar. If I miss seminar, I fail the practicum. Then the food waits 3 minutes. I slid the plate to the side rather than over her work. Do you want me to build the schedule only, or sit beside you while you call your advisor? She glanced at the scallops, then at the block of butcher paper I had taped to the cabinet. Build it first. If it survives contact with reality, you can stay for the call. I drew the week the way I built a service plan. Fixed reservations in black, flexible prep in blue, deadlines in red. Joanna entered every billable hour requirement, seminar, commute, and clinic shift herself. I broke the crowded blocks into mise en place, service, and recovery windows. then moved nothing without asking. At 7:40, we found the real failure point, not Thursday's seminar, but a client review Bryce had placed 90 minutes before it, with no travel buffer. "That meeting can move," Joanna said, typing. The client asked for Friday. Bryce marked Thursday. One constraint removed. I set a clean fork beside her. "Food break?" "No." She looked at the production board again. The skillet ticked as it cooled. "Fine. 3 bites." She ate while drafting an email to Dr. Priya Shah, her academic advisor. The message requested a documented independent study substitution allowed under Section 4B, attached her employment schedule, and asked for a faculty-supervised Sunday check-in. I checked only the timing grid. Joanna checked every academic statement and pressed send herself. "Doctor," Shah answered 20 minutes later with a secure meeting link. Joanna authorized me to remain on the call as a scheduling support person and nothing more. "Doctor." Shah reviewed the request, asked Joanna 3 questions, then offered conditional approval pending a signed faculty form and practicum supervisor confirmation. No shortcut, no favor, a process with boxes that could actually be completed. The next morning, I reached the registrar's office 10 minutes before it opened with the printed schedule packet sealed inside Joanna's manila folder. She came up the stairs behind me, coffee in one hand and the signed faculty page in the other. "Do you want me to carry it? Or do you want it in your hands?" I asked. "Carry it to the window," she said. "I submit it." She did. The clerk stamped the receipt at 8:07. "Doctor?" Shah's conditional approval became official before my first produce delivery reached the Ironwood. The hallway settled into that peculiar silence after an alarm resets. Not peaceful yet, but no longer demanding that everyone run. That evening, Joanna returned to my kitchen with the same manila folder and a new set of printed screenshots. Richard had sent time-stamped images of her tuition portal, course logs, and the unsigned equity transfer agreement. His message beneath them was short: "Signed by Thursday at 6, or the partners receive everything Friday morning." She placed the screenshots beside her empty plate. "He will leak them." I dried my hands and stayed on my side of the island. "Do you want me to help build options? Or do you want quiet while you decide?" "Options." Her thumbnail pressed into her index finger, then stopped. "And I decide what goes into the room." We built the response together. Joanna identified the firm's nonprofit clients, the revenue they produced, and the strategic gap a licensed family counseling practice could fill. I translated the work into service timing. What had to be disclosed before Richard's email? What could wait? And which documents needed copies at every seat? She wrote the proposal. I tested the order. When I suggested calling the degree a secret acquisition, she crossed it out and wrote professional development conducted on personal time. "Clarity over theater," she said. "That is a terrible restaurant slogan." Her laugh came out before she could stop it. "Make the scallops. Eithan." It was the first time she used the name, not because I cooked for a living, but because the schedule board had held through a real deadline. I looked away first and turned back to the stove. Friday morning, the Ironwood catered the firm's quarterly partner review. That put me in the conference suite for a legitimate reason and nowhere near Joanna's decision. Wayne ran the hot boxes. I ran the service clock. At 8:55, every coffee was poured, every plate was warm, and Joanna's proposal sat face down at her place because she had put it there herself. The senior partner, Helena Park, entered with Bryce and 6 other partners. Richard's email arrived at 9:01. Phones lit around the mahogany table. Joanna waited until the last screen stopped moving, then stood. "The documents Richard Alvarez sent are authentic," she said. "I am completing a master's degree in social work on my own time. I have also prepared a nonprofit sector consulting proposal that uses those credentials without reducing my current client obligations." She turned the first page. "I will not sign an equity transfer under threat, and my divorce will not be managed through this firm." Helena read the revenue model, then looked at the schedule Joanna and I had built. "Who verified that this does not compromise delivery?" "I did," Joanna said. "My advisor approved the academic structure. My client leads confirmed the revised review windows. The kitchen-style production board came from Eithan Ward, but every professional commitment on it is mine. Richard's second email arrived while she was speaking. Helena glanced at it, then set her phone face down. Mr. Alvarez has documented his own attempt to influence a partner decision through a domestic dispute. Legal will preserve both emails. Joanna finished the pitch. The partners approved a 6-month non-profit consulting pilot and required an ethics wall around her divorce. Bryce cleared his throat as if he expected the room to forget he had circulated the upstate rumor. Helena did not let him. Mr. A. Cole, you will correct any staffing information you repeated without confirmation. Bryce nodded. I will. After the partners left, Helena stopped beside the service cart. Your courses landed between her pages exactly when she needed the pause. Timing is the job, I said. That afternoon, Wayne backed through the Ironwood's kitchen door with a 50-pound crate of yellow onions and dropped it onto the non-slip floor. You look less miserable, he said. Bryce was at the bar last night bragging that Joanna is taking an upstate offer after graduation. Big pay bump. The tip of my boning knife gouged a line into the cutting board before I caught it. Joanna had told the partners she would lead a 6-month pilot. She had not told me what came after it. I worked the double shift without texting her. By Sunday, she noticed the missing scheduled check-in and knocked on my door with the white card in one hand. You heard the rumor, she said. Wayne heard Bryce, and you decided I was leaving without asking me. Her voice stayed calm, which made the accusation harder to avoid. I looked at the gouge in the cutting board. I called it restraint. It was control with better manners. I have not accepted the offer. She set the card on the counter. I also have not decided to stay. That choice is mine. Eithan. It is. I kept both hands at my sides. I will not ask you to choose around me. She left the card there and went downstairs. The silence after the latch closed had the same ringing emptiness as a building after an alarm. Everyone safe, nothing settled. 2 days before her final presentation, the sky broke open over the city. Rain hammered the Ironwood's loading dock hard enough to blur the alley lights. I was closing the lunch line when Joanna called. A truck jackknifed on I-95, she said. A sedan clipped my rear bumper. I am on the shoulder with state police. I am not injured, but the car is disabled. My presentation begins in 58 minutes. I set a clean sheet of order paper on the pass. Do you want me to come to you, contact Dr. Shaw, or help you build a remote presentation? Remote, she said. I have the binder in USB. I need power, a stable connection, and proof of the accident. 3 stations. I said, police incident number, secure room, academic approval. You handle Dr. Dear Shaw. I will handle equipment and route. Wayne took the dinner prep list without being asked twice. I packed the restaurant's banquet tablet, a charged hotspot, extension cable, and dry towels into a delivery case. The highway patrol dispatcher gave me an open frontage road route to the North Service barracks and confirmed I could enter after showing identification. I took the motorcycle because it fit the route, not because laws had stopped applying. At the barracks, an officer met me at the gate and signed the incident number onto Joanna's accommodation form. She was waiting in a small training room, presentation binder open, rain darkening the shoulders of her coat. I placed the tablet on a folding table and checked the connection. Do you want me inside during the presentation? I asked. She looked at the blank video window, then at me. Stay until Dr. Shaw confirms the feed. After that, wait outside. We worked with the grain of the emergency instead of trying to force a path through blocked traffic. Dr. Shaw verified the police report. The department chair approved a limited remote accommodation, and the auditorium technician opened the secure link. Joanna presented from the state police training room at the scheduled time. I watched the connection bar hold steady, then stepped into the corridor as promised. 43 minutes later, the door opened. Joanna held the binder against one hip rather than her chest. I passed. You did the presentation. You kept the station from collapsing. She glanced at the equipment case. Thank you, Chef. I held her gaze, then looked toward the rain-streaked window. You are welcome. That night she knocked on my door with an embossed certificate and the white card. She said both on the island, the certificate straight and the card deliberately crooked. "You still owe me a question," she said. "Which one?" "The one you never asked after Wayne's rumor." I rested both palms on the counter. "Are you taking the upstate job?" "No. I agreed to complete the firm's 6-month nonprofit pilot, then leave on documented terms. Helena approved the transition this afternoon. Joanna pushed the card toward me. Your friend said I wouldn't pick you." The small, messy heart had softened at one edge from being carried. He was wrong, I said. She tapped the number with one finger. "Call me?" "Tonight." I did not close the distance for her. Joanna came around the island and offered her hand. I took it, and we stood in the quiet kitchen with the certificate between us and no emergency left to solve before we could begin. 6 months later, Joanna and I co-hosted a small graduation and private practice opening in the community room above her new commercial office. Wayne handled chairs badly. I handled food correctly. Dr. Shaw brought the framed completion certificate. Helena attended after signing the firm's final transition letter, which closed the nonprofit pilot and released Joanna from the partnership track without penalty. Richard's pressure had ended through a separate process, not wishful thinking. Garage camera footage and the missing relay fuse supported a police report for vehicle tampering. At formal mediation, he withdrew the equity demand, accepted a fixed alimony settlement, and signed a non-interference provision covering Joanna's work and education. Bryce had sent a written correction to the firm after HR documented the rumor. None of them had become nicer. They had simply lost the leverage they had been using. Joanna stood beside the refreshment table in a light blue dress, one hand resting on the same manila folder that had once felt like body armor. When the room settled after the microphone test, the silence carried no alarm inside it. "Before we eat," she said, "this practice exists because a lot of people respected a process instead of trying to own the outcome." She nodded toward Dr. Shaw and Helena, then toward me. "Eithan is my partner. He also built the schedule for tonight, which is why Wayne has been forbidden from moving the dessert table." Wayne raised both hands. "One structural mistake." "3, I said. The room laughed. Joanna reached into the manila folder and removed 2 brass keys on a plain ring. One opens the private practice office, the other opens our apartment. You already live there, but I wanted the choice stated in front of people who know us. She placed the keys in my palm, then opened the signed event calendar to the coming month. Every Sunday dinner was blocked in ink, along with one blank weekend neither of us had scheduled for the other. Dr. Shaw signed the opening calendar as a witness. Helena added the firm's transition date beneath it, and Mara Chen, off-duty and carrying a box of pastries, confirmed that the garage evidence had been released to Joanna's attorney after mediation. Wayne looked from the keys to Joanna, then at me. "I may have misread table 12, he said. "You misread most tables," Joanna replied, and handed him a tray before he could defend himself. The gathering moved forward around us, neighbors choosing food, former classmates touring the office, and Joanna opening the door to each room with her own key. The next morning, bright sun spilled across the polished hardwood floors of the apartment. I stood at the stove, flipping a 3-egg omelet in a carbon steel pan. Joanna sat at the island with a case file open, wearing one of my oversized flannel shirts, her hair tied in a loose knot. The coffee machine beeped. I poured her black coffee and set it beside her left hand. She touched my wrist once, then lifted the mug. "Hey, chef." "Yeah," I slid the omelet onto the warm plate. "The mediation clerk filed the final settlement this morning. The equity division and alimony terms are closed." "Good. Eat before it gets cold." She smiled and picked up her fork. The kitchen settled into the particular silence of a building after the alarm resets, and I wrote her name across the coming weekend on the fridge calendar. I still did not call my father on his birthday. That thread remained mine to face. You do not sand against the grain because it is faster. You learn which pressure belongs to you, which choice belongs to her, and when to stop pushing. The end. Closing thoughts. Courage can look quiet, asking the right question, using the fair process, and refusing to let another person turn time into a weapon. The green flag is not rescue without permission. It is consistent support that protects her agency, respects her decisions, and stays present after the crisis ends. Would you have trusted Joanna's plan at the partner review or chosen a different path? Please like and subscribe so we can share more stories like this.